One would wonder why any rather intelligent person of middle age would have 100 different versions of Cinderella. I'm not quite sure, but I have 100 versions of Cinderella. Question is, why? I started with just trying to decide what was a fairy tale, and I picked Cinderella. And then one of my students said, I have a book called Prince Cinders, and it's a perspective of a boy in the Cinderella tale. I said, bring it in so I can see it. And they did. Of course, then I had to buy it because I wanted to have a girl's perspective and a boy's. And then someone said, I have the funniest Cinderella book you're ever going to see, Cinderella Penguin. This book makes me laugh every time I read it, every time. And the students absolutely love it. What's not to love? It's got penguins, and they look funny. And they're dressed like Cinderella's stepsisters, and Cinderella is a penguin, and the prince is a penguin, and the fairy godmother is a penguin. Of course you love it. So this was a great book with a very funny ending. So then the collection just seemed to grow on its own. I'm a big fan of Roald Dahl, and Roald Dahl has a book of poetry, and one of the poems is a revolting rhyme, which is disgusting. So that means that every kid in my class loved it. And what I did was I said, announcer, this poem was written by Roald Dahl. It's included in the book Revolting Rhymes. We hope you enjoy Cinderella. And then we divided it up for each student to make it into a play. So they did this play about Cinderella, but it's really gross, which means they loved it. And you can see I have numbered parts. And sometimes I had to change the words. Like here, it says that he tracked the maiden down and put the shoe on top of a crate of beer. No, it had to be root beer. Couldn't have regular beer. So we had to make a few adjustments, but everything else was okay. The hardest part to achieve was when he cut off her head. But the kids loved that part, so we included it, of course. Here we have Dinorella for the dinosaurs lover. This is the Bigfoot Orella hunting in the forest. We have the Halloween Cinderella. Many books about dogs. For some reason, people like writing books about dogs. So you have Cinderella dogs dressed in every kind of, this is the fairy god dog right here. And here's all the characters for this book. But if you want it animated, you have Ruffarella. This is a good place to start with really young kids. It's called Cindy Big Hair. And the pictures are perfect for little kids. But I have to say, second graders love this too. And fashion girls love this. So the question is, how do you use these? I needed to find some sort of comparison chart where we started with the original Cinderella. But then I found out that the original Cinderella was called Yeh Shen, and it came from China. So we had to start with Yeh Shen, and then we went to the French version of Cinderella, Perrault. And then from there, we would take one other book, and the kids would choose any book that they like and read it. And each kid would choose a book. And then they would get together in a group of, let's say, 4 kids and decide which of the 4 books the group would work on. And the group would work on comparing this version, whatever they chose, to the original version of Cinderella, the Perrault version or the Yeh Shen version. Some of them were very comical. This is called Cinderella's Bum. Yes. And this one you have to read in an accent from Samoa or one of the islands, and they love it because at the end, well, I can't show you. At the end it's sort of X-rated, but definitely worth reading. Sumarella. If you have 2 versions of the same book, this would be ideal for a group of lower readers who are struggling with reading, where they can both have the same book and help each other with the reading. Culturally, you have African Cinderella, Mufaro's beautiful daughters from Africa. You have, this is Vietnamese, Korean, this is Israeli, but you have to be able to read Hebrew. That was a gift. This is a fantastic book. This is a Middle Eastern Cinderella story, and it is very popular with my group. Culturally, it's appropriate clothing and traditions. It's all about the father and the daughter Cinderella and her sandal that she wears, but she gets into all kinds of trouble, and the result is pretty funny, and the kids will totally enjoy it. Let me see if I can find, here's her prince. Yeah. And in the back, always go to the back of the book. Here's the author's note. It's based a little bit on the Arabian Nights. So, very favorite book. And then this is like a more modern take, Cinderella. It's a feminist book of Cinderella. This is a 2-perspective book. That awful Cinderella and the classic Cinderella, depending on which way you want to read it. There's also one that's written by the mouse. And let's see, this is time periods. You have different time periods. This is from the jazz era, So all the clothing is appropriate to the time period. I urge you, though, to be careful, because in many cases they don't change the story, they only change the clothing. And that is not as much of value to me as if they change the time period, then they should change the story also, because the situations are different. So be careful about that. For example, a lot of the African American versions of Cinderella, they're just African American characters, but the story is the exact same. They could make it far more interesting, so you have to find the right version for you. And if you want to read something at a higher level, you can see the number of pages here. These are also Cinderella stories, but they are chapter books. So once the kids get excited, they go through these books. They may read 10 Cinderella books. If they get excited about them, they'll read 10 or 12 of them. Then if you want to transition into a chapter book, if they're still excited, this is a good way to go.